The captain's quill trembles as he writes in the ship's log, the ink freezing before it touches parchment, in the unnatural cold that has descended upon the Atlantic. April 17, 1811, position 41°35". The ocean has become glass. Not ice as winter brings, not the grinding flows of the Arctic, but something else entirely, water transformed into a substance unknown to maritime science, holding 300 vessels motionless as if time itself had crystallized around their hulls. From the British merchant fleet to Spanish galleons, from American whalers to French naval frigates, every ship between the Azores and the Grand Banks found itself locked in place at precisely 2:47 a.m. Greenwich time. The water didn't freeze in the way sailors understood freezing. It became something between liquid and solid, transparent yet immovable, neither cold enough to form ice nor warm enough to flow. For 11 hours, the Atlantic Ocean ceased to be an ocean, becoming instead a vast crystal prison that defied every law of physics known to the maritime world of 1811. The HMS Intrepid's log, preserved in the British Admiralty archives, describes water that maintains its clarity yet refuses all motion, as if the very essence of liquidity has been suspended. The Spanish vessel Santa Isabella recorded that objects dropped into this transformed ocean didn't sink, but remained suspended at the point of contact, as if the water had become a three-dimensional painting. French naval records from the frigate Téméraire note that the transformed water transmitted sound with impossible clarity. Conversations from ships miles away could be heard, as if speakers stood on the same deck. The American whaler Perseverance documented that sea creatures remained visible but motionless beneath the glassy surface. Whales frozen mid-breach, schools of fish suspended like clouds of silver in an aqueous sky. Every account agrees on the fundamental impossibility. The ocean hadn't frozen in any conventional sense, but had transformed into something that shouldn't exist. The first mystery formulates around the simultaneity of the event. Ships separated by thousands of miles experienced the transformation at the exact same moment, regardless of local time or position. The Russian naval vessel Sviatoslav, operating near Iceland, reported the change at the same instant as the Portuguese merchant ship Nossa Senhora, navigating off the coast of Africa. This synchronization across such vast distances suggests not a natural phenomenon spreading from a point of origin, but something that affected the entire Atlantic basin instantaneously. The transformation respected no boundaries of temperature or depth. Tropical waters near the equator became as rigid as those in northern latitudes. Shallow coastal areas transformed identically to regions above oceanic trenches, thousands of fathoms deep. The silence that followed the transformation haunts every account more than the event itself. Not the absence of sound, but the wrong kind of sound. The ocean's voice changed to something alien. Waves didn't lap against hulls because waves no longer existed. Wind still blew, but it passed over the transformed surface without creating ripples or swells. Sailors reported hearing a low harmonic tone like the resonance of a vast crystal bell emanating from the water itself. Some accounts describe whispers in unknown languages rising from the depths, though no words could be distinguished. The Portuguese captain João Mendoza wrote that the silence was heavy with intention, as if the ocean itself was listening to something we couldn't hear, waiting for a signal we couldn't comprehend. Suspicion and cognitive dissonance emerged as crews attempted to understand their predicament. Traditional maritime knowledge became useless, compasses spun wildly, sextants gave impossible readings, chronometers ran backward or stopped entirely. The British Admiralty's classified report, declassified only in 1961, reveals that several captains ordered their crews to attempt walking on the transformed surface. Those who tried found they could stand on the water as if it were solid glass. But their feet left no impressions, and after a few steps they would suddenly sink to their knees before being pushed back up, as if the ocean was selectively solid. The French Academy of Sciences received reports that the transformed water exhibited properties of both a solid and a liquid simultaneously. It could support weight while still allowing slow penetration, like an impossibly viscous fluid that operated outside the normal laws of physics. The launch of investigation began immediately as scientifically minded officers attempted to document and analyze the phenomenon. The British naval surgeon William Thornbury lowered measuring instruments into the transformed water and recorded temperatures that should have been impossible. The water maintained exactly 4 degrees throughout its entire depth, the temperature at which water reaches its maximum density, regardless of air temperature or solar heating. Chemical tests conducted by the French naturalist aboard the Téméraire revealed that the water's composition hadn't changed, yet it behaved as if its molecular structure had been fundamentally altered. Most disturbing were the biological observations. Marine life hadn't died but entered a state of suspended animation. Hearts beating once per minute, gills moving imperceptibly slowly, as if time itself had been diluted within the transformed medium. The first discovery emerged from an unlikely source. A Portuguese navigator's assistant who possessed perfect pitch noticed that the harmonic tone emanating from the water corresponded exactly to the note si quer, but at a frequency that seemed to shift between audible and inaudible ranges. When multiple ships compared observations, they realized the tone was loudest at specific coordinates that formed a perfect geometric pattern across the Atlantic. These points, when plotted on charts, created a grid of equilateral triangles, each point exactly 186 nautical miles from its neighbors. The precision of this pattern across thousands of square miles of ocean suggested not a natural phenomenon, but something designed, calculated, implemented with mathematical perfection that implied intelligence rather than chance. The expansion of scope came as ships began sharing information through an unexpected property of the transformed ocean. It conducted human voices perfectly across vast distances, but only at certain times. Every hour, for exactly 3 minutes, crews could speak to other vessels as if they were adjacent, regardless of actual distance. During these communication windows, a picture emerged of an Atlantic-wide phenomenon affecting roughly 300 vessels, but mysteriously nothing else. Birds flew normally over the transformed surface. Rain fell and pooled in perfectly circular droplets that rolled like mercury across the glass-like water. Most significantly, the transformation had hard boundaries. Ships reported that at exactly 28 degrees latitude and 52 degrees longitude, the ocean abruptly returned to normal, the transformation ending as sharply as a wall. The clash with established knowledge forced captains and naturalists to document observations that contradicted fundamental understanding of matter and energy. The transformed water exhibited no thermal expansion or contraction despite temperature changes. It reflected light in ways that created mirages of objects that didn't exist. Ghost ships, floating cities, and inexplicable structures that appeared solid from one angle and transparent from another. The American captain Ezra Whitman reported seeing his own ship reflected in the water below, but the reflection showed damage and wear that wouldn't occur to his vessel for another decade, as if the transformed ocean reflected not the present, but potential futures. The second layer mystery unveiled itself when crews noticed that certain individuals were affected differently by proximity to the transformed water. Approximately 1 in 7 sailors reported experiencing what they called temporal displacement, memories of events that hadn't happened yet, knowledge of ship positions they couldn't know, awareness of conversations occurring on vessels beyond the range of even the enhanced communication. The ship's boy aboard HMS Intrepid, a 12-year-old named Thomas Hartwell, began speaking in languages he didn't know, describing technologies that wouldn't exist for another century, drawing diagrams of machines that utilized principles unknown to 1811 science. These affected individuals also reported seeing beings moving beneath the transformed surface, tall, translucent figures that seemed to be examining the trapped vessels from below. The mapping of the unknown revealed that the transformed region wasn't random, but followed submarine geography with impossible precision. The boundaries of the transformation aligned exactly with underwater mountain ranges that hadn't been discovered in 1811, following trenches and ridges that wouldn't be mapped for another century. The geometric pattern of harmonic points corresponded to seamounts and volcanic formations miles beneath the surface, as if the transformation was anchored to the ocean floor's topology. This knowledge, impossible for the era, suggested that whatever caused the transformation possessed complete understanding of ocean bathymetry that surpassed human knowledge by generations. The central paradox emerged as noon approached on April 17th. The transformed water began exhibiting properties that violated conservation of energy. It started generating heat without any apparent source, warming to exactly 17 degrees regardless of depth or previous temperature. This heat was uniform throughout the transformed region, from surface to whatever depths instruments could reach. Calculations by scientifically trained officers showed that the energy required for this heating exceeded the total solar input to Earth. Yet it occurred simultaneously across millions of square miles of ocean. The water itself seemed to be creating energy from nothing, or drawing it from some source undetectable to human senses. The structural detail of the transformation revealed itself through experiments conducted by the more adventurous crews. When objects were lowered into the transformed water, they experienced time dilation effects. Pocket watches attached to sounding lines ran slower the deeper they descended, losing hours for every 100 fathoms. Organic materials aged rapidly when submerged. Fresh fruit would ripen and rot in minutes. Iron would rust instantly, but gold and silver remained unaffected. Most disturbing, human hair and nail clippings dissolved completely when contacted with the transformed water, as if it recognized and selectively destroyed human biological material while leaving everything else merely time-accelerated. The dual realities compared when some crews reported seeing entirely different phenomena than others at the same location. The British saw geometric patterns in the water. The French observed organic, almost biological structures, while the Spanish reported architectural forms resembling underwater cities. These weren't hallucinations. Drawings made independently showed consistent details within national groups, but differed completely between them. It was as if the transformed ocean showed each cultural group what they expected or feared to see, adapting its appearance to the collective consciousness of the observers. Yet physical measurements remained consistent across all observers, suggesting multiple layers of reality operating simultaneously. The hypothesis formation began among the scientifically minded officers who compared observations during the communication windows. The transformation wasn't random or natural, but appeared to be a controlled experiment or demonstration. The precision of the timing, the geometric patterns, the selective effects on different materials and people all pointed to intelligence and purpose. The French naturalists proposed that the ocean had been temporarily claimed by some form of non-human intelligence, conducting observations or tests on human vessels. The British surgeons suggested the transformation was a side effect of something larger. Perhaps the ocean had been used as a medium for communication or transportation by beings operating outside normal space-time. Contradictory evidence appeared as some ships' logs recorded different durations for the event. While most experienced 11 hours of transformation, 17 vessels recorded only 3 hours, 6 reported a full day, and 1 Portuguese ship insisted the event lasted mere minutes. These weren't errors. Chronometers confirmed the discrepancies. Ships in visual contact experienced different durations simultaneously, as if time itself had become elastic within the transformed zone. The American whaler Perseverance reported seeing the British merchant vessel Crown and Anchor begin moving 7 hours before their own release, despite both ships being locked in the same transformed water at the same location. The global context emerges from diplomatic correspondence that survived in various national archives. The transformation wasn't limited to the Atlantic. Fragmentary reports from the Pacific describe similar events on the same date. The Japanese recorded water becoming iron off Honshu. Chinese fishermen reported seas that refused to accept boats in the South China Sea. The Ottoman Empire documented that the Eastern Mediterranean became as solid as Turkish delight for exactly 11 minutes at the same moment the Atlantic transformed. These reports were suppressed or dismissed as coincidence, but the timing alignment across global oceanic systems suggests a planetary-scale event that affected all oceans simultaneously, with the Atlantic experiencing the most dramatic and prolonged effects. The inner reflection came as sailors confronted their helplessness against forces beyond comprehension. Many crews reported profound psychological changes during the 11 hours of imprisonment. Some experienced what they called oceanic consciousness, a temporary awareness of every living thing in the ocean, from the smallest plankton to great whales, all connected in a vast living network that human perception could barely grasp. Others reported existential terror as they realized humanity's insignificance against powers that could transform the fundamental nature of matter at will. The Portuguese chaplain aboard Nossa Senhora wrote that the event was God showing us that our dominion over the seas is an illusion, that we sail at the sufferance of forces we cannot fathom. The climax arrived at exactly 1:47 p.m. Greenwich time, when the transformation reversed instantaneously, not gradually, not in waves, but in a single moment across the entire affected area. The crystallized water became liquid between one heartbeat and the next. Ships lurched as waves reformed, compasses snapped to correct readings, chronometers resumed a normal operation. But the reversal wasn't complete. The water maintained its impossible 17 Celsius temperature for 3 more days, and the harmonic tone, while fainter, could be heard for weeks afterward by those who knew to listen for it. Most significantly, every ship found itself displaced from its morning position by exactly 11.11 nautical miles to the northeast, as if the entire transformed region had moved while locked in crystalline stillness. The consequences cascaded through maritime culture and science. Insurance companies refused to cover anomalous oceanic transformations, creating a new category of uninsurable maritime risk. The British Admiralty established secret protocols for responding to future transformations, including orders to attempt communication with any entities observed beneath transformed waters. Several nations began developing new navigation techniques that didn't rely on magnetic compasses, anticipating future events that might affect Earth's magnetic field. The scientific community split between those who insisted on finding natural explanations and those who argued the event proved the existence of non-human intelligence, with capabilities far exceeding human understanding. Parallel evidence emerged from indigenous maritime cultures worldwide. Polynesian navigators revealed oral traditions describing nights when the ocean sleeps and dreams, events that occurred every few centuries where the sea became solid and showed visions of other worlds. West African coastal peoples had ceremonies specifically designed to appease the consciousness beneath that could stop the waters from flowing. Inuit tradition spoke of times when the sea spirits would hold the water still to listen to the sky. These traditions, previously dismissed as mythology, suddenly seemed to be describing the same phenomenon from different cultural perspectives, suggesting the April 1811 event wasn't unique, but part of a recurring pattern humanity had forgotten how to recognize. The return to the core question forces acknowledgement of the inexplicable. What caused the Atlantic Ocean to transform for exactly 11 hours on April 17, 1811? The simultaneous nature of the event, its mathematical precision, its selective effects on different materials and people, and its apparent intelligence in response all point towards something beyond natural phenomenon. The transformation might have been a test, a demonstration, a communication attempt, or merely a side effect of activities incomprehensible to human understanding. The fact that it has never recurred, or at least never been documented as recurring, raises the possibility that humanity failed some kind of test or didn't provide the response that was expected. The temporal reevaluation reveals patterns within patterns. The 11-hour duration, the 1111-mile displacement, the date, 17/4/1811, digits that sum to 11, suggest numerical significance that transcends coincidence. Some researchers have noted that major maritime disasters often occur in years whose digits sum to 11, as if the ocean periodically tests humanity's readiness for another transformation. The electromagnetic anomalies reported during the event, compass disruption, atmospheric lighting, metallic tastes reported by crews, mirror phenomena associated with modern observations of unidentified aerial and underwater phenomena, suggesting persistent interest from whatever intelligence commanded the transformation. The reconstruction of the lost world glimpsed during those 11 hours reveals terrifying possibilities. The geometric patterns, the harmonic frequencies, the mathematical precision all suggest that Earth's oceans might not be the passive bodies of water we assume, but could be components in a vast mechanism or organism we don't perceive. The transformation might have been a calibration, a maintenance procedure, or a communication between Earth and something elsewhere. The suspended animation of marine life suggests capability to pause biological processes at will. The temporal effects hint at manipulation of space-time itself. The selective perception effects imply understanding of human consciousness at a level we haven't achieved. The true purpose unveils itself through synthesis of all observations. The transformation was a reminder. After centuries of maritime expansion, as humanity began to believe it had conquered the oceans, something demonstrated that our mastery is an illusion. The precise timing as the Napoleonic Wars raged and maritime power determined global dominance wasn't coincidental. Something wanted to show that human conflicts over ocean control were irrelevant against forces that could alter the fundamental nature of water itself. The message was clear: the oceans belong to something else, and humanity sails by permission, not by right. The scientific analysis of water samples collected during the transformation revealed isotopic ratios that shouldn't exist in Earth's oceans. The proportion of deuterium to standard hydrogen suggested water that had been subjected to pressures and temperatures found only in gas giant planets or stellar cores. Microscopic examination showed crystalline structures at the molecular level that maintained their organization even after the water returned to liquid state, as if the transformation had permanently altered the water's memory of what it could be. These samples, preserved in sealed containers, still exhibit anomalous properties. They freeze at different temperatures than normal seawater. They conduct electricity differently, and most mysteriously, they seem to respond to lunar phases in ways that normal water doesn't. The validation of authenticity comes from the sheer number and diversity of consistent accounts. 300 ships, dozens of nationalities, multiple languages, and varied educational levels all reported fundamentally the same impossible event with consistent details. The precision of timing recorded across multiple chronometers, the matching of geometric patterns drawn by navigators who had no contact with each other, the identical descriptions of the harmonic tone, all point to a genuine event rather than mass hallucination or folklore. Most compelling is what wasn't reported. No crew claimed to understand what happened. No nation attempted to claim responsibility or advantage, and no scientific explanation was offered that satisfied even the proposers. The motive for concealment becomes clear when examining how quickly official channels moved to suppress discussion of the event. By May 1811, the British Admiralty had classified all reports. The French Academy declared the matter outside scientific discourse, and the Spanish Navy forbade crews from discussing their experiences. Insurance claims were quietly paid without investigation. Sailors were reassigned to prevent crews from comparing stories, and ship logs were edited to remove or minimize references to the transformation. The suppression wasn't to prevent panic, but to prevent investigation. Someone in positions of power knew or suspected what had caused the transformation, and decided humanity wasn't ready for that knowledge. The philosophical collapse arrives with the realization that if water, the fundamental requirement for life, can be transformed at will by unknown forces, then human existence itself rests on permissions we don't understand from entities we can't perceive. Every assumption about natural law, about the stability of matter, about humanity's place in the cosmic order crumbles when confronted with evidence that something can alter the basic properties of substances across oceanic scales. The transformation of the Atlantic wasn't just a physical event, but an ontological crisis that challenged whether humans truly understand the nature of the reality they inhabit. The closing echo resonates across the centuries since that April night when the ocean stopped being an ocean. In maritime museums and naval archives and the whispered stories of old sailors, the memory persists of the night when the Atlantic became glass and humanity glimpsed forces that dwarf our comprehension. The transformation lasted 11 hours, but its implications are eternal. We sail on waters we don't control, through mysteries we can't fathom, at the mercy of intelligences we can't perceive. And perhaps most terrifying of all is the waiting. The knowledge that what happened once can happen again, that somewhere beneath the waves or beyond the stars, something watches and waits, deciding whether humanity has finally become worthy of understanding why, on one night in 1811, the ocean itself paused to listen to voices we couldn't hear, singing songs we'll never understand.